For more than 2 decades, we've been educating our listeners about financial topics that are most important to you. Do you have enough money to retire? How will you keep from running out of money? What's your plan for managing market risk? What about taxes, inflation, and healthcare? Each week, we talk with an advisor at Lucia Capital Group about these issues and more. This is Managing Your Financial Future.
And that it is. Welcome to the program, Managing Your Financial Future. As you just heard, I am your podcast host, Johnny Dean. We are back with a fun topic today. I've enjoyed these topics over the last. Did it sound like I'm really not being cynical on this. 3 things every retiree should understand. We're going to talk about these. I went back over the past year or so, maybe I guess just 2025, and I took a look at the different topics that we've covered. And then what I did was I kind of matched up some of the questions that we got from listeners with those topics as best I could. And while we had questions from people on really a wide variety of things because of all the things we talked about, I noticed that there were maybe 3 issues or 3 topics, whatever, that really stood out to me. Just feedback from what people were asking us. And so today we're going to talk about those 3 that I narrowed it down to. And we're not just going to tell you what they are, but we're going to tell you why they're important to understand. So that is our challenge today. Professor Rick Plum, certified financial planner professional and accredited wealth management advisor. The challenge here is talking about what appear to be complicated topics, but are in reality ideas that by the end of this episode, ideas that will be easily understood by our listening audience. Now, how's that for some pressure on you?
Easily understood.
Yeah.
That means I'm going to need to talk slower. I've been told I speak relatively quickly.
Well, one of the this is why we get questions on these things. And I'm going to tell you right up front what they are, and I don't want you to run screaming off and saying, "Oh, wow, what is this? Oh man, can't you guys talk about the how to earn 25% guaranteed every year for life? I mean, can't you that kind of
tax free? Come on, throw that in too.
Yeah, tax free, sure. No,
we're not going to. I want to circle back to something real quick. A friend of mine who listens to these podcasts, he listens to them at an accelerated speed. He says he can listen to you and understand you at 2 times, but he has to slow me. At best, he can do me 1.5 times.
Oh, no. I've heard some people do that. I've to other podcasts. Now,
Yes.
Let me just say, these are important things. Don't try that at home, folks. Don't speed this up. Listen to it. What is this? It's like half hour out of your life per week. Come on. All right, let's go over these 3 things very quickly, and then we'll address them one by one. The first thing that retirees, and really everybody, but retirees especially should understand, is something called step up in basis. All right, we talk about it a lot. We mention it a lot. We throw that term around a lot. We don't always explain it, so we will. Step up in basis is number 1. The second thing is what's called IRMA. And with that, I think that came out last week, actually. The Income-Related Monthly Adjustment Amount, IRMAA. We're going to be talking about that. What is it and why is it important and why you could be surprised by that. And the third thing that we're going to talk about is called I'll call it the widow's tax penalty. It doesn't really have a name officially.
I'll call it the survivor's tax penalty.
Okay, there you go. That's better. That's better. Widow is kind of an older term anyway. So a survivor.
And it connotates one side of the equation.
Yeah. Do they still say widows and widowers? I mean, is that like host and hostess? Is that like
we've kind of changed that to survivor because it covers everything.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Although no, not Survivor TV show.
Well, it is true though that the women do tend to outlive men, but that's fine. So we'll call it the survivor's tax penalty. Those are the 3. So let's get started on these things in the limited amount of time that we have at regular speed. Step up in basis. As I said, we throw this term around a lot, but it's an important topic to understand. Now, this has to do with how assets like, real estate
capital
stocks,
assets, they don't get revalued. The value is the value. But the determination of tax is changed. I mean, if I inherit a house that's worth $1 million, I don't revalue it when somebody dies.
Okay,
but I revalue or I reset what my beginning point for paying taxes is. Now, basis is it's an accounting term. It's like realized and unrealized losses. What are those? Anyway, basis in most cases. Now, there's a couple different ways and a couple different times that we use the term basis, and they have similar but different meanings. But in this particular area, Basis is the starting point for determining whether you have a gain or a loss on the disposition of a capital asset, real estate, stocks, bonds, anything that could give you potential capital gain and or capital loss. That means it's owned by you, not in a tax-deferred account.
Yeah.
Tax-deferred accounts, IRAs, 401ks, retirement plans, annuities, those are not technically capital assets that we're dealing with. They do not have capital gains associated with them. They have ordinary income, and it's deferred in all those cases. So they do not have the basis that we're talking about here. They don't get a change in the basis that we're talking about here. So we're talking about assets that we own directly, either in our name, joint name with somebody else, or as part of a living trust. That's fine too, but capital assets. And so let's just start from the beginning in that let's assume that I buy a stock for $10,000 and it goes up. I own it and it goes up while I own it. Now, that is a gain, correct? I mean, the stock went from $10,000, let's say it goes to $15,000. Little accounting class here. That's a $5,000 gain. However, it's still in the stock, and that stock could go down or up before I can actually sell it. And so they call that an unrealized gain because I haven't had the opportunity to permanentize that gain by selling it. Once I sell it during my lifetime, I own it, I sell it. Let's say I sell it for that $15,000. I paid $10 for it. My basis is $10. It's now $15. Now I sell it, and that gain becomes a real gain because I sold it and I have the real cash. It's called a realized gain. That is taxable to me if I do that during my lifetime. Now contrast that to that same purchase. I pay $10,000 for it. It grows to $15,000. And it's worth $15,000 on the day that the proverbial Mack truck finds me, and I am no longer on the face of the earth. I'm under it, unfortunately. I have passed away. The basis on that stock for the people inheriting that stock is not what I paid for it. It is what it was worth the day I died. So I'm going to leave that to my spouse. I'm going to leave that to my kids. I'm going to leave that to John Dean. Well, no, that's not going to happen. Let's not go there.
Man.
Yeah, you're driving the truck, too. I can see that in your eyes.
Just because I sped up when I saw you is no reason to disinherit me. All right, go ahead.
So when an asset is inherited, a capital asset is inherited, the basis is reset as if I bought it, or as if the inheritor bought it the day the person died. All of that unrealized gain that was in that asset during my lifetime evaporates on the day that I die. And so my heirs get it's a resetting of the basis. The basis, the starting point for determining gain or loss, is reset the day I die. Now, normally, we call it a step up in basis. But it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes it works against you too, because it is a resetting. You don't get to pick the higher of what the decedent's basis was or what the new value is. It's a resetting to the day of death. So in times like 2022, somebody may have bought something in late 21 and it went down 20% sometime in 2022 when they died. Well, their heirs, that loss, that unrealized loss that the owner had, it evaporated too. So the basis got reset to the date of death. We saw this being a problem with people that passed away in 2009, 10, where people lost money, especially on real estate. 2001, 2, those times. In down markets, this doesn't work so well. But most of the time, it works really well for people that are leaving assets to beneficiaries that they would like to make as tax efficient as possible. But it does potentially cause some problems, especially later in life, especially when you have very large gains. We see people holding on to real estate that they have extraordinary gains in. I mean, they bought a place on the beach in 1960, for $100,000, and now it's worth $4 million or some ungodly amount. And so if they were to sell it during their lifetime because they're just sick of managing the real estate, they would sell it. They have to pay tax on that in that hypothetical example, $3,900,000 of gain. If, on the other hand, they can stick it out and hold it until they die, whoever they leave it to could sell it the very next day or as quickly as it takes to sell a $4 million real estate parcel and not pay any taxes from an income tax standpoint. So that resetting of the basis is important, especially later in life or if somebody's not healthy. We see this a lot where somebody has a very large stock position that has a very large gain, and they don't necessarily want to sell it because they don't want to trigger the tax, and they know it's only going to be another year or two. Unfortunately, people will look at it that way, that whoever inherits it gets up a full step up in basis. And if they're in a state like California or New York, one of the higher income tax states, where their capital gain may be at the 20% tax bracket if they sell it, plus the 3.8% net investment income tax, plus this state of California 10 plus 11, 12, 13% tax. You're talking about 50% taxes. That asset could go down by 50%, and then when somebody inherits it, they still get more after tax than they would have if they sold it and the person left them cash. So it does have an issue. A step up, a resetting of the basis is an estate planning issue that we have to look at when we have large gains or losses for that matter, because we may want to sell the loss so we can start using it during the person's lifetime, because that loss goes away when they die as well.
Yeah, now you brought up real estate on this, and I think this is where the bigger gains, and I mean, a $5,000 gain in a stock that
not too worried.
Not necessarily, depending on how many other assets you have. But yeah, let's just to nutshell this. Let's say you bought a property for $100,000, and then you're old and you're 85, you're whatever, and it's now worth $1 million because you bought it at the right time. There's a $900,000 gain in there. Let's say it's a rental property, so we don't have to worry about the exclusions and all that stuff. That's a $900,000 gain, and if so, I'm 85 years old and I decide, well, I'm really tired of this thing. I'm just going to sell it. Well, as you just said, I would have to pay taxes, many different taxes on that $900,000 of gain. Or a better way to do it, to at least maybe avoid the taxes.
I'm not saying better. I'm saying a different way to do it, depending on what your priorities are.
Well, if you want to save taxes, I'm going to say, that's what I said from a tax standpoint, a better way, if you don't want to pay the taxes, could be to let your heirs inherit it, at which point that former $100,000 basis, and I'm going to assume you made no improvements. Let's just keep it simple. That former $100,000 basis is now $1 million once you sell it, and then there's no capital gain whatsoever.
After the death.
Well, and this is where it's important because, it's not just in things like inheriting, but it's also, if you have assets you want to give to charities and things like that. Now, some things don't receive a step up or a resetting of a basis if you have them inside a tax-deferred account, let's say. And this is where we get into maybe stocks and things like that.
And stocks,
just very quickly explain that before we move on to the next one.
Well, stocks held personally are capital assets. Stocks held inside of an IRA are IRA assets. They don't get the same tax treatment, right? If I sell a stock that I own personally, I create a gain or loss that I have to pay or include in my tax return this year. If I sell a stock inside my IRA, it's no harm, no foul. There's no tax at that point. Everything's deferred in there. So there's different treatments. Stocks in my personal name get a step up, a resetting of the basis when I die. Stocks in my IRA, the IRA does not get a resetting of the basis. It is still going to be taxable. Now, I'm going to tell you, unfortunately, our firm lost a long-term client. He was an older gentleman, and he had a stock position with a very large gain in it. Very, multiple six figures. I mean, it was a nice gain. His widow called, to let us know, and she said, and so-and-so said, I need to do something about our tax situation. That because he passed away, we have to do something because of taxes. And because we had brought up and talked to him about the resetting of the basis, he said, okay, that's one reason why I'm not going to sell this stock. He wasn't doing well, unfortunately. But he told his wife that there was going to be a positive tax situation if he passed away. But she didn't know what it was. She's like, what do I have to do? She's grasping at anything to find something positive out there, and was like, okay, we'll take care of it. we reset the basis, and in their case, they had to do some other estate planning work with the portability of his estate tax exclusion. But this is one of those areas where knowing the rules ahead of time helps you go into and get things done.
Yeah, and that's why I'm bringing it up as one of the things that retirees, especially retirees, need to know. We have to get to the others, but this is an important thing. I said step up. You said reset. It's probably more accurate reset. Although if you hold assets long enough and they're okay, there's probably a step up. But
Murphy's Law says that you're going to find a loss and it's going to go away. Come on, I'm a big advocate for Murphy's Law. I understand it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But maybe you have some gains in something else, and you can offset those. So that's a whole other discussion. All right. So change in basis, step up in basis, whatever you want to call it. That is the first one. Let's get to the second one here in the time that we have that we've brought up in the past. And this is called IRMA. You may have heard us talk about her or it, IRMAA, the income-related monthly adjustment amount. Now, Rick, this is something that can affect people, but it may not affect them right away until a couple of years later. Let's just run this down very quickly and talk about what it is and why people need to know what it is.
Well, one of the things that was created back in 2007 to pay for the Affordable Care Act, a.k.a. Obamacare, was this new tax or this new premium, whatever you want to call it, on Medicare. The typical Medicare premium that we pay is actually only 25% of the actual cost of the Medicare premium. The government pays the other 75%. So like this year, 2025, the Medicare premium was $185. Well, that was only 25% of the real cost of that Medicare Part B. And in 2007, when they were creating the Affordable Care Act, they said, you know what? Rich people deserve to pay more. Deserve, require, whatever you want to call it. And so if your income goes over certain thresholds, you get the privilege, and I say that tongue-in-cheek sarcastically, of paying more for your Medicare Part B, C, or D premiums. Now, this is what we're going to talk about mostly right now is Medicare Part B and C. But it's a matter of the premium for 2025 was $185. Premium for 2026 is going to be $202.90. That premium, if your income goes over a certain threshold, goes up. It goes up from 25% of the real premium to 35% of the real premium. It goes up if you go too high, 50%, 65, 80. And if your income goes really high, it goes to 85% of the real premium that would normally be charged on that, except for the subsidies from the government Medicare. So it gets up to be very expensive. Now, what income are they talking about? Well, they're not going to take your word on it for this year. So we're just finishing up 2025. We know the premium for 2026 is going to be $202.90 going forward. And we're going to tell them, well, I don't want to pay a big number for my Medicare. I'm going to tell them my income is $100,000. They don't take our word for it. What they do is so to determine what you're going to pay for your Medicare premium in 2026, they look at the 2024 tax return. When they were calculating the 2025 Medicare premium for that, in late 2024, they looked at the 2023. They looked 2 years back. 2023's tax return was used to determine what you're going to pay in 2025. 2024's tax return is used to determine what you're going to pay in 2026. So they're going to look at the 2024 tax return. Are you single or married? If you're single and your income in 2024 was over $109,000, you get the privilege of paying more for your Medicare premium. The premiums go up, quite a bit actually. If you're over 109 but under 137, you pay $284. If you're under 171 but over 137, it goes to $405. And then it goes to $527 if you're over the 171, and it goes to $649 if you're over 205, and as high as $688 if you're over $500,000 as a single person.
That's $688 a month, by the way, and that's per person. If you're
$688. Well, that was a single taxpayer, so it's only one person, but it's $688.90. So call it $689. For the married filing a joint return, it starts off when your 2024 income exceeded $218,000. Now, they look at it every year. So if I tripped into Medicare, into IRMA in my 2025 year because my 2023 tax return was high because I had a sale of a second property, or I had a stock sale or something that went on that abnormally pushed my income up high. Then when it comes around to 2024, if my income comes back down in 24, my premium in 26 is going to come back down. So it is a one-time deal. And there are some life-changing events that you can claim an exclusion for, so that if I'm making $400,000 or $500,000 or $1 million a year while I'm working, and then I retire and my income falls down below the thresholds, I can say, don't look 2 years ago, use the current year. Mm-hmm. And then they'll true it up at the end of the year. Retirement is a life-changing event. Divorce, marriage, things of that nature are life-changing events. Selling a property is not a life-changing event. It may make some money. It may make your life different, but it is not a life-changing event for this issue.
Well, and this is where I think you see this a lot, is if somebody, and I could be wrong, maybe people wind up staying in IRMA, forever. But I think this is where it catches people off guard, where when we were talking about, if you sell a property, well, you don't get the step up in basis, you had a huge gain and all this stuff, and now all of a sudden you get the privilege of paying more, especially if you had like a big gain in that property.
Not understanding the step up, the gifting issues, the Medicare issues, the IRMA issues. IRMA is one of those things that sometimes there's just nothing you can do about it. And there are things that when we're doing Roth conversions, when we're doing tax planning, when we're doing all these types of issues of asset location, we're not just looking at tax brackets, we're looking at IRMA, because IRMA raises her ugly little head every once in a while, and it just, like I said, it comes after the fact, and it just kind of sucko.
Yeah, so there aren't always ways to alleviate that. I mean, sometimes you sell a property and you didn't want to keep it, and you're just going to have to pay it. So, but as you just kind of said, there may be ways, just very quickly, because we're kind of running out of time. But there may be certain ways to avoid that or lessen the impact of IRMA, right?
Well, in the year of the sale, you're looking for tax loss harvesting, see if you can offset as much of that gain as possible. Make sure you keep good records on anything you've got going on with your property or your investment, to see if you can raise your basis with additional investments and other things. So understanding what your basis is. You bought a property for $100,000. We talked about that earlier, but you added a new roof. You added landscaping. You did this. You re-landscaped it a couple years later. You added a pool. You did this. You did that. You did this. And other than maintenance, anytime you improved it, that is an additional investment in the property that increases your basis.
Yeah, so anytime, and this goes back to the basis thing again, which is why these are maybe connected. The step up in basis in this case, if you can do that, that's certainly one other way to. Yeah,
if I can limit my capital gain on that sale, then my gross income isn't as high. My gross income isn't as high. I don't have as much, if any, IRMA that I have to pay 2 years later.
That's all part of the strategizing. So there are ways to do that. So let's get to the third thing here in the time that we have left here, because I do want to cover this, because this is a common thing, because in most cases, if you have a married couple, one spouse will die before the other. It's just, that's generally what happens. We're going to talk about that. We're going to call this the survivor's tax penalty. Run that down, if you would, please, very quickly, Professor Plum.
Well, it's survivor's tax penalty is just something we call it, in that it's part of our planning and part of what you should be doing. Again, there's one that we were talking about just the other day. We have two individuals, both retired, both waited till later to take their Social Security. They both have very nice Social Securities. They do expect to live a while, but they always worry that, what happens if somebody gets sick or what happens. But they've got like $3,500 each of Social Security, and they've each got a little bit of pension, not a lot. But if one of them passes away, that Social Security goes away. So that $7,000 of gross income turns to $3,500 a month in gross income. And some of the pension money goes away because they only have the 50% joint and survivor option. So they lose income when one of them dies. It's not that their needs are going to go down by that much, but now they're lucky in that they have enough income, or they have enough assets, I should say, specifically tax deferred accounts, to make up the shortfall that they would lose when somebody passes away. But that's going to all be taxable, whereas the Social Security was only 85% taxable. And the brackets, while the 10, 12, 22, 24, and so on brackets are still the same brackets, the amount of money that we can have in any individual bracket gets cut dramatically.
Well, this is because you're going from presumably married filing jointly, to now a single taxpayer.
Right. You can continue to file jointly in the year that your spouse passes away. But the following year, you cannot claim married filing jointly. And we don't have a widowers tax bracket. You're either married filing jointly, single, or married filing separately, as determined on the last day of the year, except for when there's a death during the year, and then you can do the married still. But the next year, you're going to be filing as a single individual. So that couple that used to have, maybe they had $75,000, $80,000 of income. Well, actually, they had $7,000 a month of Social Security, so that's $84,000 right there. So they had $100,000 of income. That's in the 12% tax bracket for a married filing a joint return. When you turn that around and maybe you only get $90,000 of income, but you lost the Social Security, but you picked it up by having an increase in distribution from the IRA, now you're firmly well into the 22% bracket for a single individual. So your income went down and your expenses go up.
And this is
the survivor penalty.
Yeah, and this is true. You may have somebody with a $3,500 Social Security benefit, but maybe the other one only has $900. And so when the person dies, the $900 benefit goes away, the $3,500 continues. So as you were kind of alluding to right now, even if your income doesn't drop precipitously, because maybe you have 100% joint and survivor pension instead of 50, and you did, the Social Security you lost wasn't all that much, or maybe they hadn't taken it yet, whatever it was. But it's this change in tax bracket. All of a sudden, this $100,000 of income, maybe I continue to have close to $100,000 of income or more, but
the taxes will go up by more than double.
Yeah, I'm in the single bracket. So just quickly, can you tell me, is there anything that can be done in this situation? I'm sure there must be something.
Well, that's where we look at let's use up the bracket we're in as much as possible to do the Roth conversions. Let's see what we can do as far as lessening the impact, finding a more tax efficient way to get the income as a survivor, where you think that, okay, I'm in the 22% bracket now, and I'm probably always going to be in the 22% bracket. So as a married couple, why would I really want to accelerate? It's not because you're going to help the joint life. It's because that's going to jump your spouses. So let's use up more of that 22% bracket. Use up all the 22, assuming we don't hit IRMA too early, and go from there. So it's just a matter of we want to make sure that we are as efficient as possible.
Well, we do, and like I said, the reason I brought this up was because in a married situation, we're probably going to lose. It's not all that common, although it does happen where both spouses pass away at the same time. So this is something. If you are married, be prepared for it. Understand that this may be something, the survivor's tax penalty. That's actually is that a maybe, can we coin that? Can we copyright that phrase or trademark it? Because that's. I wonder, you brought up there's no survivor's tax bracket. Maybe there needs to be a survivor's tax bracket.
Okay, then you call your congressman, because they don't seem to want to take my call.
That's because you're trying to teach them everything you know and tell them that they were wrong.
Yeah, it works for me.
It sure does. So those are these are the three things that we came up with. Again, it was a step up, or let's call it resetting of a basis, step up in many cases. That's one thing that retirees need to know. They need to know about this IRMA, IRMAA, income-related monthly adjustment amount that can hit them if they make too much money. By the way, that IRMA, is that a modified adjusted gross income situation? Is that?
It is a modified adjusted gross income. It does include tax-free interest and other things. It is not after deductions, and that's another thing. The deductions get cut in half for the most part. And I was just playing with some numbers while you were talking. And that married couple with $7,000 of income from Social Security and $100,000 overall, at that level, they pay zero in income tax. None, zero. And that's not even,
of course, because most of it's Social Security.
And with the with just a single individual that had $42,000 and then they needed $90,000 overall, so they're getting it from their IRAs and things. Their tax is now close to a little over $9,000.
So they went from $0 to $9,000
as a survivor for that. And with $100,000 of income for the married, $90,000 of income for the survivor.
Yeah. Wow.
100,000 spendable for the joint married couple. 81,000 spendable. That's a bigger hit. So you took a hit because somebody passed, and you took another hit because of taxes.
You see why we talk about this stuff, folks? This is why this is important. So the survivor's tax penalty being the third thing. If you want to know more about this, I would urge you to talk to any of the Lucia Capital Group advisors. Give them a call, 800-644-1150, 800-644-1150. I hope we made this understandable because as textbooky as some of these things sound, they will probably one or two, maybe all three, could wind up hitting you. And you are, if you're not ready for it, you haven't planned for it, or if an advisor that you're working with, or if you're doing it by yourself, you don't know how to handle it or deal with it, it can really hurt you overall. So give the folks at Lucia Capital Group a call, 800-644-1150, and talk to Professor Rick Plum or any of the Lucia Capital Group advisors. They all work together as kind of a brain trust. 800-644-1150, the phone number. Go to luciacap.com, LUCIACAP.com, to find out more information about not just the things that we talked about today, but other important things that you need to learn about. We've got our downloadable guides. Once again, the estate planning guide, Social Security guide, retirement income guide, buckets guide, all that stuff. Just type it into the search bar in the upper right corner, and you can download it as a PDF, absolutely free, and read it. And that should help you understand some of this stuff. I do like talking about these things because, we try to remember not to throw around terms. But, Rick, we do this sometimes just not thinking about it.
It becomes second nature to us. It's a language we speak, all day, and we forget that it's not the same language everybody speaks. Doesn't everybody understand? Speak financialese?
Sure, of course they do. Even when we have terms like Roth IRA, especially for some of the newer listeners that we have. So it's important to talk about this stuff, and that's why we do. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast. Go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Download every single episode every single week to your device and listen to your heart's content. As I said, try to say every week, you're going to learn something. I can nearly guarantee that. Okay, if you're listening to this the week it comes out, which I think is the middle of December, we're going to be off for the Christmas holiday and then the New Year's, just depending on where this falls and when our episodes normally come out. So this should be, I believe, the last live episode of 2025. Rick, it's been a lot of fun this year.
Thank you.
It started out strong, and it stayed strong all year. So that's pretty good for us, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes we set the bar too high early in the year. But that didn't happen this year. So my thanks to Professor Rick Plum, certified financial planner professional and accredited wealth management advisor, and, of course, all the folks behind the scenes here at Managing Your Financial Future. For Professor Rick Plum and the rest of the gang, I'm your podcast host, Johnny Dean. This is Managing Your Financial Future. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great new year, and we'll talk to you all again next time. The information provided should not be considered specific tax, legal, or investment advice and is not specific to any individual's personal circumstances. Each taxpayer should seek independent advice from a tax professional based on his or her individual circumstances. These materials are provided for general information and educational purposes based upon publicly available information from sources believed to be reliable. The information in these materials may change at any time without notice, and its accuracy cannot be guaranteed. Examples cited are hypothetical, are for illustrative purposes only, are not guaranteed, and subject to potential federal and state law amendments. There's no guarantee that you will achieve the results discussed or illustrated. There's no guarantee that any investment strategy will meet its stated objective. All investments involve risk, including potential loss of principal. Investments in real estate may be subject to a higher degree of market risk because of concentration in a specific industry, sector, or geographical sector. Other risks can include quite, but are not limited to, declines in the value of real estate, potential illiquidity, risks related to general and economic conditions, stage of development, and defaults by borrower bonds are subject to market and interest rate risk. If sold prior to maturity, bond values will decline as interest rates rise. Bonds are subject to availability, change in price, call features, and credit risk. IRA withdrawals will be taxed at ordinary income rates. Withdrawals prior to age 59.5 may also be subject to a 10% penalty tax. Roth IRA distributions of principal from a Roth IRA are tax-free. However, any earnings will be taxed at ordinary income rates, and a 10% penalty tax will apply if withdrawn prior to age 59.5 or within 5 years of the date the Roth IRA was established, whichever is longer. Traditional IRA account owners have considerations to make before performing a Roth IRA conversion. These primarily include income tax consequences on the converted amount in the year of conversion, withdrawal limitations from a Roth IRA, and income limitations for future contributions to a Roth IRA. In addition, if you are required to take a required minimum distribution in the year you convert, you must do so before converting to a Roth IRA 401. K benefits may be subject to change at your employer, the governing pension, or benefit organization's discretion. Fixed and variable annuities annuities are suitable for long-term investing, such as retirement investing. Gains from tax-deferred investments are taxable as ordinary income upon withdrawal. Guarantees are based on the claims-paying ability of the issuing company. Withdrawals made prior to age 59 and a half are subject to a 10% IRS penalty tax, and surrender charges may apply. Variable annuities are subject to market risk and may lose value. The information provided is based on current laws, which are subject to change at any time. Lucia Capital Group is not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any government agency. Social Security rules can be complex. For more information about Social Security benefits, visit the SSA website at ssa.gov or call 800-772-1213 to speak with an SSA representative. Rick Plum is a registered representative with, and securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor and member. FINRA SIPC LPL Financial Insurance License number 0518721. LPLIA Insurance License number 0B91442.